In the snow's cold embrace, a great bear lies still, and millions of bees move like a living tide on the bear, their bodies pulsing over fur that no longer exists to the eye. Her once beautiful snowy fur was now dirty, tangled, and covered in a painful spreading infection, clinging to her thin, weakened body. The pain came slowly at first, like an ember beneath thick fur, but now it burned. Every breath, a battle, every movement, a mistake. Her body, once strong and unyielding, had betrayed her. They had already taken so much. Her strength, her breath, her will to move. She could not breathe. She could not run. The swarm moved as one, crawling, stinging, digging. Her body was no longer hers. It belonged to them now. She had no more strength to fight. All seemed lost. Her cub had never known a world without his mother's warmth. It was a comfort as old as his own heartbeat. In her fur he found peace. But peace is only the absence of fear, and fear was drawing close. The tiny snow bear cub, no bigger than a loaf of bread, quivered, its fluffy body trembling not just from the icy wind but from the fear gleaming in its wide, innocent eyes. He let out a soft whimper, his tiny paws stretching in vain, unable to reach his mother or ease her pain. He stood frozen, powerless, as the parasites carried on their gruesome feast, their presence made even more unbearable by the rancid stench lingering in the icy air. Deep in his tiny heart, with the unspoken wisdom of a cub, he understood his mother was slipping away. Though pain clouded her eyes and she labored in breathing, the mother's gaze still flickered toward her cub from time to time. A weak growl, more a sigh than a threat, rumbled in her chest, a final attempt to comfort her cub, to show she was still there. There is no movement, no sound, nothing but the bear and her cub. The parasites drained her strength, stripping away her will and leaving behind only a dull but a heavy, hopeless fatigue. The strength and might of a beast of nature, weakened by the unyielding grip of parasites. The air is damp, cold, heavy with something unspoken. The cub trembles, but not from the cold, not from fear, but from something deeper, something stronger. He must act, he must fight, because if he doesn't, he will never see her open her eyes again. A world both breathtaking and merciless, where beauty and danger are one and the same. The cub hesitates, contemplating the descent, but he had no choice, and with just fierce will, the cub begins his descent into the treacherous Himalayan mountainside. Koda navigates the steep, icy terrain of the mountain. The wind whipped around him, threatening to tear him from the mountainside, but he pressed on, his small body a testament to his unwavering determination. Hunger grips him, but fear cuts deeper. He is truly alone. His small body struggles against the harsh environment. His limbs weaken, his breath turns shallow, his body begins to surrender. Yet, through the blizzard, through the relentless howling void, he pushes on. After a while, it soon arrives at a frozen riverbank. The cub cautiously tests the ice. The ice cracks beneath the cub's weight. He had to turn and carefully makes its way across the frozen river, thereby prolonging access to help. The constant danger of the crossing is evident. He made it across the river, the icy grip of the current behind him, But there is no relief, no warmth, only the storm waiting ahead. Snow whips around him, blurring his vision as he continues his relentless journey. Despite the blizzard, his determination remains unwavering. He continues to push forward, undeterred by the overwhelming blizzard. The cub, weakened by hunger, soon discovers birds feeding on scraps atop a mountain ledge. His stomach growls, a stark reminder of his desperate hunger. He attempts to approach the birds, his hope battling his weakness. Startled, the birds take flight, leaving Coda in solitude. His isolation and hunger are further emphasized as the birds disappear. The cub soon notices a village far off near the mountain ledge. Hope shines in his eyes as he sets off towards the village. He quickens his pace, his hope fueling into determination. The village appears as a sign of potential help. The cub cautiously approaches the village outskirts, filled with apprehension. Distant barking intensifies Coda's anxiety about his reception. The cub takes a deep breath, stealing whilst before entering the village. The village awaits, a symbol of both potential refuge and unknown dangers. He continues to move forward, his journey into the unknown deepening. Coda arrives at the village square, greeted by the stares of the villagers. The villagers react with a mixture of fear and curiosity to the cub's arrival. The cub's vulnerability is exposed under the intense scrutiny of the villagers. The tension in the village square was so thick, it could be cut by a knife. He stands alone, facing the collective gaze of the village. The cub is escorted to the village elder hut under the daylight. The cub trembles, his tiny paws pressing into the cold wooden floor. His breath comes in short, frantic puffs. He whimpers, nudging at the elder's robe, eyes wide with desperation. His whimpers turn into sharp, pleading cries. He claws at the wooden floor, his desperation growing. He rushes to the door, then back to the elder. Over and over, a plea without words. And then, the elder sees it. Not just the fear, not just the urgency, but the truth. A truth no words could ever carry. He tries to run, but the world tilts. His legs fold. The snow rushes up to meet him. The cub does not rise. He cannot run. He cannot fight. Not like this. If he is to save anyone, he must first be saved. A stranger in their midst, a creature of the wild. Some see only a helpless cub, others see an omen. Every second lost tightens the grip of fear around his heart. He needs to move, he needs to go, but his body refuses. The villagers stand in the village square, their voices hushed but urgent. The cub's arrival has unsettled them. Bears do not come to us for help, and where there is one, there are others. We should be way. One of them said, but he's only a cub. If the storm left him alone, then so should we. Another woman added, once, a lone wolf came to our village, starved and shivering. We took it in. That same winter, the river froze solid, and the fish died. The villagers murmur, exchanging wary glances. Some nod. Are we to turn away a helpless creature simply because we fear bad luck? What does that make us? A young man asked them all. The village elder, hearing all the murmuring, thought to himself, a cub does not carry omens, it carries only its own life. The elder warns that the cub's fate remains uncertain, only revealing itself in time. However, The villager's choice in the present will immediately define who they are. The hunter hopes they won't regret this. The elder nods, the choice made, not by fate, but by mercy. Then it is decided. He stays. The world does not pause for decisions. It simply waits to see what follows. The small cub fully wakes, and it remembers. It must go. It must go now. What is it, little one? The village elder wondered. He's trying to tell us something, a young villager said. The elder watches and then realizes the cub was afraid, but not for himself. This cub did not come to us to be saved. It came to ask for something more. The village elder said to the villagers and explained what he thought the cub came for. Help. And if this is a trap? A villager murmurs, his words laced with hesitation. If its mother waits for us in the snow? The silence is heavy, stretched thin between fear and duty. The young villager stands forward, his voice unwavering. Then we will face what comes, but we will not be the ones who turned away when we were needed. The elder nods. The elder finally speaks, his voice steady, carrying the weight of the moment. Prepare supplies, we leave at dawn. Glances are exchanged, but no one speaks against the decision. The village stirs with quiet urgency. Heavy fur cloaks are fastened, supplies packed, and firewood stacked high. They are leaving the warmth of their homes, stepping into the unknown. The cub watches. The village elder leads a group of villagers across the Himalayan mountainside, following Koda. The villagers carry essential supplies as they make their way to Koda's cave. The ascent is slow, the air sharp and biting. The mountain path winds through jagged cliffs, each step sinking into thick snow. The cub hesitates, sniffing the air. Something feels wrong. The sky darkens. A howl rises in the distance. Not an animal, but the wind itself. The blizzard returns with a vengeance, swallowing the world in white. They call out to each other, but the storm devours their voices. The cub's tracks vanish behind them. Have they come too far? Are they lost forever in the snow? Through the blizzard, a small silhouette appears. The cub shakes off snow, blinking up at them. It turns and begins walking again, sure of its path. The villagers follow. The storm clears just enough to reveal a dark abyss ahead, a sheer drop hidden by the snow. One more step, and they would have been lost forever. The cub stops just in time. The cub sniffs the air, then veers left, leading them toward a narrow path winding along the cliffside. The elder hesitates, then nods. They follow. A deep rumble shakes the ground. Snow shifts. An avalanche. The villagers break into a run, hearts pounding. The mountain itself seems to fight their passage. A crack in the mountainside. Shelter. The villagers dive inside just as the avalanche consumes the path behind them. The storm rages outside, but for now, they are safe. Emerging from the cave, they step into a valley, untouched by time. The wind is still. The air is thick with something ancient, something watching. A deep, rumbling roar shakes the valley. The cub's ears perk up. It knows this sound. It knows this voice. The mother is near. A shadow looms ahead, a massive shape, barely breathing. The mother. The cub runs to her side, nudging her. She does not move. The villagers whispered among themselves. Could this bear still be saved? The elder stepped forward. Fear had no place here. A villager lifted a staff and gently nudged the bear's side. A pulsive movement rippled across her body as bees erupted into the air, disturbed. The villagers flinched, covering their faces as a low fire and smoke. Only these could break the bees' grip. The villagers lit bundles of dried herbs, thick smoke curling into the sky. They waved it over the bear's body, urging the bees to abandon her. Not all bees fled. Some turned on their attackers. A black cloud of fury swarmed the villagers, stinging hands and faces. They fell back, shouting, but the elder stood firm. With the bees scattered, the horror beneath was revealed. A crust of barnacles buried deep into the bear's flesh. The villagers gasped. These were no ordinary barnacles. They had rooted into her body. The villagers took out sharpened blades and heated them in the fire. The elder nodded. There was no choice but to cut the barnacles away, one by one. The first knife plunged in. For every barnacle removed, the mother's body bled thick, slow rivers of dark fluid. The villagers worked tirelessly, prying away the parasitic shells. The cub watched as the snow turned red. The largest barnacle sat over the mother's heart, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The villagers hesitated. Could they remove it without killing her? The elder stepped forward. He placed a hand on the bear's head, whispering something ancient. Then, with a final strike, the blade plunged deep. A shudder rippled through the mother's body. The villagers stepped back. For the first time in days, the great bear took a breath. The barnacle shell cracked apart, crumbling to dust. The bear still could not stand. Deep wounds covered her. The villagers moved quickly, pressing salve into the cuts, wrapping her in warm cloth. The battle had been won, but the healing just begun. The villagers brought forward bowls of warm broth and honey, offering them to the bear. Her eyes, once dull, flickered with life. Slowly, she lifted her head and drank. The valley, once filled with buzzing and suffering, now stood in pure silence. The bees were gone, the barnacles destroyed. The mother, though weak, was alive. The fire crackled softly as the villagers set up camp around the mother and her cub. They watched over the pair, ensuring the mother's breath remained steady. No one truly slept. Some villagers took turns watching the mother, tending to her wounds. The cub stirred in the night, pressing close to the villagers who had saved its family. The first rays of sunlight stretched across the valley, painting the snow in soft gold. Slowly, the great bear pushed herself upright. Her limbs trembled, weak but no longer bound by parasites. The villagers watched in silence. Then, with a final heave, she stood. The bear turned to face them. She did not speak, nor did she need to. Instead, she lowered her massive head in a slow, deliberate bow. The villagers, understanding, returned the gesture. The cub nudged against each villager, its small body pressing into them as if memorizing their scent. It chirped softly, its way of saying goodbye. The mother bear turned toward the distant mountains, her home. The cub hesitated but followed. The villagers watched as the two began their slow, steady journey into the unknown. The elder looked upon the departing figures and nodded. "We were meant to be here," he murmured. Some villagers smiled, others wiped away quiet tears. Their journey was complete. With nothing left to do, the villagers gathered their supplies and turned back toward their village. They had not just saved a bear, they had fulfilled something greater. As the villagers disappeared into the trees, a gust of wind rushed through the valley, carrying the scent of the fire, the snow, and the warmth of a bond that would never be forgotten. Sometimes, the greatest stories are not about strength, but about the courage to help, even when we do not fully understand. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more immersive tales.